Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Imina 35 na student Guahan is back from recess. At this time, I'm going to recognize Legislative Secretary Senator Amanda Shelton. You are recognized.
Seduous Masi, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to go back to motions.
On that motion, without any objections, motion carries. Please proceed, Senator Shelton.
Seduous Masi, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place Bill number 106-35LS as amended by the Committee on Education, Air Transportation, and Statistics, Research and Planning, an act to amend subsection 12107 FN 12111 ABD 12116 BCE of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to removing the duties of the Superintendent of Education and the Guam Education Board, to add Section 12107Z of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to authorizing the public auditor to supervise audits, to amend subsection 12103G, 12108A, 12111A of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to establishing standards for the Guam Academy Charter School Council, Board of Trustees, and Appeals Board. To add subsection 12111G and H of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to establishing rules for the Charter School Council, to amend subsection 12106A and subsection 12116F of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to establishing deadlines, to add subsection 12116G of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to prior year obligations and remaining appropriated funds on the session agenda.
On that motion, are there any objections? Senator Therese?
As amended.
Madam Speaker, I think it's been amended by the committee,
Yes,
and it wasn't available on
It was
yesterday.
noted as amended.
So maybe can we get copies? I didn't get that yesterday, so maybe it's available today, but,
Okay.
is it? So it's amended, yeah, because
Yes,
the
it
title's
is
different.
It's as amended. Are there any objections? No objections. Motion carries. Sergeant of Arms, please make sure that the amended copies are with each of our colleagues. Sidus Masi. Again, Senator Shelton, I will recognize you for the second motion.
Seduous Masi, Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place Bill number 107-35LS, an act to amend subsection 12107U, 12113A and B, 12114A and D, and to add new subsection 12113E3 and 12114A6, all of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to accreditation and the renewal period for charter schools, accreditation status, and alleviating the causes of probation for the same, onto the session agenda.
On that motion, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, Legislative Secretary. I'm going to go ahead and acknowledge, Sergeant of Arms, please make sure those bills are sent to our colleagues. I'm going to acknowledge Senator Pito Terlahi for his motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place on the session agenda from the Committee on Public Safety, Border Safety, Military and Veterans Affairs, Mayor's Council, Infrastructure and Public Transit, the nomination of Evelyn R. Duenas to serve as a member of the Guam Regional Transit Authority Board of Directors.
Sidus Masi, Senator Terlahi. On that motion, is to place the nomination of Evelyn R. Duenas to serve as a member of the Guam Regional Transit Authority Board of Directors on this session agenda. Hearing no objection, motion carries. Sizos Masi, Senator Talaimis. At this time, are there any other motions? Senator Jim Moylan, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to place Bill number 5735 Core, an act to amend subsection 12106G of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to the process of approving or denying charter school petitions on session agenda.
On the motion to place Bill number 57-35 COR on the session agenda, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. If there's no other motions, I'd like to ask Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano, can you please, Assistant Majority Leader, please take us back to legislative concurrence, please?
Senator Maasi, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to move us back to the legislative concurrence.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. Senator Terlai. At this time, I will recognize Senator Jose Pito Terlai. You are recognized at this time.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Public Safety, Board of Safety, Military and Veterans Affairs, Mayor's Council, Infrastructure and Public Transit, the nomination of Evelyn R. Duenas to serve as a member of the Guam Regional Transit Authority Board of Directors with the recommendation to do confirm.
With the recommendation to do confirm. Yes. On that motion, to place Evelyn R. Duenas to serve as a member of the Guam Regional Transit Authority Board of Directors onto the voting file. Hearing no objections, motion carries. Senator Kelly Marsh, Assistant Majority Leader, can you please bring us back into second reading, please?
Sejus Maasi, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move that we go back to the second reading file.
Without any objection, Sizos Masi, Senator Taitano. Hearing no objection, motion carries. We are now on Bill number 106-35 LS. Legislative Secretary, I apologize. Senator Joseph Augustine, do you have a point of inquiry?
Yes, Madam Speaker, we have copies of the bills, but can we get copies of the committee report just so that we can go over
We're
each of
going
the
to
bills?
we're just going to take a
Recess.
very, very brief recess to make sure that everybody has copies and the committee reports are noted. We are in recess for a couple of minutes. Sorry. Email 35 na legislatura en Guahan is back from recess. Senator Shelton, Legislative Secretary, you are recognized. Say that again? I apologize. Please proceed.
Sedus Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to place Bill 106-35LS into the third reading file to discuss.
Senator Shelton, can you read as amended, please?
Sure. Oh, yes. Bill number 106-35, as amended by the Committee on Education, Air Transportation, and Statistics, Research, and Planning.
Sidus Masi, on the motion, please proceed.
Sedus Masi, Madam Speaker. Bill number 106-35LS is an act to amend subsection 12107N8, 12111ABD, 12116BCE of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to removing the duties of the Superintendent of Education and the Guam Education Board, to add Section 12107Z of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to authorizing the public auditor to supervise audits, to amend subsection 12103G, 12108A, 12111A of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to establishing standards for the Guam Academy Charter School Council, Board of Trustees, and Appeal Board, to add subsection 12111G and H of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to establishing rules for the Charter School Council, to amend subsection 12106A and subsection 12116F of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to establishing deadlines, to add subsection 12116G of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to prior year obligations and remaining appropriated funds. The Guam Academy Charter School Act of 2009 was established by Public Law 29-140, resulting in the establishment of the 3 charter schools on island: Guahan Academy Charter School, iLearn Academy Charter School, and Science is Fun and Awesome Academy Charter School. Public Law 34-116 limits each institution at 740, 620, 350 enrollees respectively. With the establishment of the Guam Academy Charter School Act of 2009, Section 12120 of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, all provisions of the Act were to expire on July 1st, 2018. However, Section 12120 was replaced by Public Law 30-176, removing the expiration date of the provisions of the Guam Academy Charter School Act. Additionally, subsection 12103G, 12107F and N, 12111A5BD, Section 12116B and C, all of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, enumerates the roles of the Superintendent of Education and the Guam Education Board, both of the Guam Department of Education. Since the Guam Academy Charter School Act of 2009 is no longer subject to expiration, there must exist a budgetary and organizational process independent of that of the Guam Department of Education. It is therefore the intent of this bill to separate the Guam Academy Charter School's budgetary and organizational process from that of the Guam Department of Education. Sidious Masi, Madam Speaker.
Sidus Masi, Senator Shelton, Legislative Secretary. Anybody else on the main motion? Anybody on the motion? Senator Tadegui, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, you know, we didn't receive the revised bill, the amended bill, until later on this afternoon, which makes it kind of difficult. You know, we're putting this bill on the floor right away to speak on it. I believe the author is not even here to speak on the bill. But please don't get me wrong, I'm the greatest fan and opponent of charter schools. I really believe that it does work, and it proves it. Look at the testing scores that are coming out of these schools. You're finding out that more parents are taking their kids out of public schools and putting them in charter schools. So I'm a great fan of charter schools. However, I understand what the bill does, and the next bill that we're going to talk on, Bill 107, the intention. It's agreed upon, Madam Speaker, with both sides agreeing this, the charter schools as well as the superintendent agreeing that they don't want to have to deal with the funding issue. Well, that being said, Madam Speaker, I kind of think this bill is the cart before the horse. If we're going to move an agency that oversees the charter schools' expenditures and spending, then we need to do so to make sure that someone is properly spending correctly, the procurement process is done correctly, and when the money is issued to them, that in the event that the amount of students declined in numbers, that the money's reverted back. See, DOE does that. If a charter school has, let's say, for an example, 200 students before they start the school year, but for some reason they actually ended up with only 150 students. So the money that's been given to them, $7,000 per student, 200 times 200, they're given that amount of money and then find out later, and who monitors that? Who monitors how many students are really enrolled? Madam Speaker, I know that when charter schools came about, they incorporated a council. And this council, which they receive a stipend, but the work that they do is volunteer, and we've seen in the last few years that they can't even make quorum. In fact, Madam Speaker, if I'm not mistaken, they don't even have a chairman of the council today. The purpose of the council that was put up, I think the intention, I remember when they started bringing charter schools into the mix and creating the council and creating the appeals board, which, by the way, has never been put together. It was meant for a council that oversees the charter schools, but unfortunately, it hasn't been working out that way because they can't even meet quorum. So, Madam Speaker, I think we need to really look at this or make some, I'm hoping some amendments come into play here that would address my biggest concern. And my biggest concern is you're taking it away from DOE and placing it where? The public auditor? Are they there during the school year? Are they there at the very beginning? We need to put someone in place for accountability purposes to oversee the charter schools, to ensure they're spending correctly, to ensure that if there's any reimbursement coming back, it comes back, to ensure that if there is an increase in enrollment, that the money goes there. There needs to be somebody in place. And that, Madam Speaker, sounds like it needs a council that is actually somebody who's a director, who gets paid to do that. That's, I think, is what we need. And if there's a way to put that amendment in this bill, then I'm in full support of it. So, Madam Speaker, I'm just going to read what I wrote here. I'm probably going to repeat some of it, but that's okay, I hope. So in reviewing the public hearing on Bill 106, there were several issues raised that concerned me, particularly with respect to the ability of the Charter School Council to properly monitor the expenditure of public funds by charter schools should DOE be removed from the process. Madam Speaker, according to the Charter School Council chairwoman, who's actually no longer chair, she had stepped down in June, Bill 106 fails to highlight the council's lack of resources, which in turn affects the council's ability to fully perform its duty and responsibility and support the charter schools. This was her testimony during Bill 106, during the public hearing. This was her testimony. With respect to June 15th deadline, requiring the Charter School Council to submit the budget of each charter school to the legislature. According to the testimony provided by the public hearing, these provisions should be modified to allow charter schools to carry forward unused per pupil allotments, considering enrollment continues through August of each year. That's what I explained earlier. Madam Speaker, another issue raised during the public hearing concerned the term appropriated budget and whether this word prevent charter schools from entering into agreements with vendors. And I believe that the amendment actually was made in here to address that concern. The amended version of Bill 106 addresses that concern by approved budget instead. So they did hear Attorney Terlahi's concern with regards to that. Also, Madam Speaker, the amended version of Bill 106 states that all remaining funds appropriated to the charter school at the end of the fiscal year may be used to pay prior year obligations, which is different from the introduced version of Bill 106, which reads, all remaining funds appropriated to the charter schools at the end of fiscal year shall be reverted back to the general fund. And this is something I wanted to ask the sponsor of this bill. Why is that? What was the change? What was the reason for that? Without losing my place, Madam Speaker, on holding the floor.
I understand.
Okay, thank you.
I
I'd
will
like
go
to
ahead
ask
and
the
accept that
author.
as an inquiry.
Thank you.
Senator Tydegui. Can you just repeat the question?
So the question is, in the first, without it being amended, when the bill was introduced, Bill 106, it said that all remaining funds appropriated to the charter school at the end of fiscal year shall be reverted back to the general fund. Now, this has been common practice. However, when the amended version came up, there was a change of heart for some reason. I'd like to know, since it was amended and we're viewing this now, as to why they changed it, and it is now all remaining funds appropriated to the charter school at the end of fiscal may be used to pay prior obligations. And my question is to why the change?
Thank you, Senator Tydegui. Okay, we're going to take a moment's recess. I will address Senator, yes, I understand, but you had I'm sorry. You mean it's 35 na las children Guam is back from recess. Senator Chalotai, we did have the floor. There was an inquiry on that, and my question is, Senator Shelton, would you like to answer the question?
Situus Masi, Madam Speaker, we are working on an amendment now, so I'd like to move to set the bill aside at the moment while we work on it and continue on to Bill 107.
On that motion, are there any objections? Motion carries. What's the next bill? Senator Amanda Shelton, Legislative Secretary, I will recognize you at this time.
Situus Masi, Madam Speaker. Bill 107-35 LS is an act to amend subsection 12107U, 12113A and B, 12114A and D, and to add a new subsection 12113E3 and 12114A6, all of Chapter 12, Title 17, Guam Code Annotated, relative to accreditation and the renewal period for charter schools, accreditation status, and alleviating the causes of probation for the same. Accreditation is a crucial element in determining whether an institution meets the standard
Senator,
of...
Legislative Speaker,
Oh,
please.
dispense it to.
Yes.
May I please move Bill 107 to the third reading file to discuss?
Situus Masi, Legislative Secretary, you can proceed.
Dispensa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Accreditation is a crucial element in determining whether an institution meets the standard of quality education. It is especially important for secondary institutions to be accredited in order for students to have access to any college in the United States. Bill 107-35 LS highlights the responsibility of the Guam Academy Charter School Council to place an academy charter school on probation or revoke a charter school's charter if said charter school fails to meet a minimum of candidacy status towards its accreditation. It is the intent of this bill to hold Guam Academy charter schools accountable for maintaining a minimum of accreditation status to ensure our charter school students have access to higher education. Situus Masi, Madam Speaker.
Buen provecho, Senator Shelton. On the main motion, anyone wishing to speak? Senator Taitigui, I will recognize you at this time.
Situus Masi, Madam Speaker, and once again, I'm a great advocate for these charter schools, and I'd like to see it happen to allow them to continue on. Now, Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to give a brief remark on Bill 107 with respect to extending the period for a charter school to attain accreditation from 5 years to 6 years. And according to the Charter School Council chairwoman, 2 of 3 charter schools have received notice of their accreditation status within 5 years. Moreover, I Learn Academy Charter School attained accreditation within 5 years prior to the expiration of their charter, and Guahan Academy Charter School received notification regarding their final decision for their accreditation prior to the expiration of their charter. Madam Speaker, regarding the potential revocation of the school charter, testimony from I Learn Academy Charter School suggests a conflict of interest between Section 5 and Section 6 of Bill 107. Section 5 changes the term may to shall in Section 12114A of 17 GCA, authorizing the Charter School Council to decide whether to place a charter school on probation or to revoke its charter, thus negating the following Section 6 of the bill, which requires the Charter School Council to place affected charter school on probation, which the council decide in the first place to revoke the charter of that school. So, Madam Speaker, I yield to the sponsor and perhaps legal counsel to address this potential conflict between Section 5 and 6 of the bill. Take a short recess.
We will take a moment's recess. y minuto 35 in the legislature, and Guahan is back from recess. I know that Senator Tello had an inquiry. Senator Amanda Shelton, Senator Tello, did everything meet your satisfaction?
Yes, Madam Speaker, thank you so much for the opportunity and to even consult with legal with regards to this conflict in Section 5 and then again in Section 6. And after speaking with legal, Madam Speaker, I'd like to make an amendment, just a slight amendment, in Section 6 where it strikes out may and underlines shall. My amendment is simply to strike out shall and maintain may. And this way, Madam Speaker, there is no conflict in Section 5 and 6. However, in Section 5, the council shall place an academy skill on probation or revoke. So there's an option between the two. But in Section 6, by saying the council may place the academy charter on probation rather than revoke its charter, it still gives them the ability to decide whether they want to do it or not, rather than making it, shall. It has to. So my amendment is just simply, Madam Speaker, is to, again, strike out shall and incorporate may in Section 6, letter D.
On that amendment, are there any objections? Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing no objections,
Thank you,
motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm done.
You're very welcome. Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Will Castro, you're recognized. I apologize. Thank you, Senator Will. Assistant Majority Leader, Senator March Taitunu, you are recognized.
Saina Maasi, Madam Speaker. This is just a small grammatical correction. On page 2 on line 21, in order for the sentence and the intention to make sense, I would amend and recommend putting the if after back in. So on line 21, if after no more than 180 days, said plan is unsuccessful in remedying the problem or alleviating the causes of the probation or such longer period as the council may specify, said plan is unsuccessful, then they can get to revoking the charter. But it doesn't really make grammatical sense if it just, the sentence starts off with no more.
Did you want to
So-
propose an
Yes, so I
amendment?
just propose unstriking the if after and just having that be left in and amending it.
On the motion, if everybody understands it clearly, it's just to lift the strike through if after 90 days, and then it says no more than 180, which is the added amendment. So it is to lift the strike through on page 2, line 21. On that amendment, are there anyone wishing to speak? Senator San Agustin, I will recognize you.
Madam Speaker, so it'll say if after no more than 180 days. That's what you're saying, right? That's the amendment. I just want to make sure that's clear.
If after no more than 180 days,
All right, thank you, ma'am.
said plan is unsuccessful. On that amendment, are there any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Will Castro, you are recognized. On the main motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to rise in support of the bill, and I want to commend the authors. Most often than not, I choose not to speak on a bill and most of the concepts that are contained in the bill, because most of the time in our deliberations, we seem to have a common understanding. But I feel it necessary to rise in support and verbalize my position, because last term, we saw one or more entities struggling with the processes that are associated with attaining accreditation. And in my humble opinion as an educator, You know, it was quite concerning and troubling for me because the spirit of accreditation, Madam Speaker, is a process of continuous improvement. It's a process of continued changes to the strategic plan or to your instructional processes or to your finance and operations. And if we don't give the entity the opportunity to make these improvements, we're really not giving them the benefit of the doubt that they're trying to come into compliance with the accrediting body standards. And I could speak firsthand to that because I had the privilege of working at an institution of higher education in the region that was on probation for well over 7 years. And the year that I was, prior to my employment at that one institution, Madam Speaker, they were placed on show cause. And suffice it to say, in less than a year after that appointment, with a very effective team, we were able to attain full accreditation without any special conditions. And so, Madam Speaker, my point would be simply that if an entity can show good faith effort at attempting to meet the standards of accreditation, which is a process of continuous improvement, I see no ground for the revocation of their charter. And so I thank in commendation, I rise in commendation and in support of Bill 107. Special thanks to also a fellow educator, Senator Telena Nelson, co-sponsored by Amanda Shelton, Senator, my colleague and friend Joseph Augustine, and James Camacho Moylan. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Cesar Smasi, Senator Castro. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Senator Shelton, would you like to close?
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank our colleagues for the discussion and for the amendments made to the bill and for their support. And I'd like to move Bill 107 to the voting file.
107-35 LS.
Yes,
Thank you.
107-35 LS to the voting file, Madam Speaker.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. Senator Shelton, are we still in for Bill 106? You still set aside? Okay. Senator Jim Moylan on Bill numbers 57-35.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to move 5735 core into third reading
And you'd like to discuss?
and move to discuss, please. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've introduced Bill 5735, which seeks to lift the 3-school limit on the number of charter schools that can be established in facilities not currently owned by Department of Education. The total number of charter schools will still be capped at 7, but this bill would also allow educators who have their own facility to establish a charter school in their non-GDOE facility, as long as they meet the requirements of a charter school license. What the bill intended to do was update the policy that made it very difficult for new charter schools to be established. Bill 57 removes the provision that says there has to be a conversion from a public school to a charter school, therefore opening up the possibility for other charter schools to emerge if they do not want to do so, especially if it opens up educational opportunities. So I ask my colleagues, I urge you to pass this bill so we can open up educational opportunities for our young students. I think this is a timely matter, and it is a good start for our kids. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Sijus Masi, Senator Moylan, on the main motion, anyone wishing to speak? Senator Joseph Augustine, I will recognize you this time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the author would yield to a question in
Please, yes. Go ahead and state the question, please.
The only question I have is, I have no objection to the bill, but what my concern is that last year, the Charter School Council gave a conditional approval of a charter school. I just want to make sure that we have an understanding that if this bill passes, it doesn't grant the conditional approval an approval, because the approval should be from the council. a final approval, not conditional, because the way the law exists is that, you submit your petition and so forth and so forth. And I don't know if the conditional approval has an expiration when they were granted last year. Okay, I'm just curious if this bill's intent is to grant the conditional approval and approval, when it doesn't read that, but I'm in support of the intent of the bill. Okay?
Senator Moylan, would you like to answer his inquiry based on that?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. The intent of the bill, well, basically in reply to the question, the facility still must meet the requirements of the charter school license. The intent of the bill is just strictly to remove the cap on the non-DOE facility. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator San Augustine, does that answer your inquiry?
Yes, ma'am,
You
it
understand?
does. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Will Castro, you're recognized. Senator Marsh, he'd like to yield to you first. Thank you, Senator Castro. Senator Taitano, you are recognized.
Taitano?
Taitano. Marsh Taitano, you are recognized.
Sana Maasi, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment for this bill. The amendment would be on Section 2 of Section 12106G, specifically page 2 at the end of line 17, to add, an academy charter school applicant shall first validate with the superintendent in writing that no available or suitable facility exists within the public school system in determining a non-converted public school application. I put forth this amendment because in this process, it seemed that as we move forward and in long-term thinking, that it opens up possibilities where we may have facilities being underutilized. And so in the big picture, it's important, I think, to make sure that there is nothing suitable, there is nothing available before going out and seeking other facilities and potentially creating a situation where something is being underutilized or something is remaining fallow. One of the examples at the public hearing was given that there have been successful partial conversions in the past or something along those lines, and they found it, at least in their own assessment, to be very good usage and a more full usage of that facility. So in following that discussion at the public hearing and seeing in long-term thinking that there could be a situation where there is underutilization of facilities or facilities eventually not being utilized while people instead set up new charter schools elsewhere, it seemed important to be able to at least have it looked at in a diligent manner by the charter school and the superintendent of GDOE.
Thank you, Senator Marsh Taitano. Senator Castro.
This is a point of inquiry for the previous speaker on the intent of the amendment.
So Senator, can you restate your?
Yes, so I am proposing an amendment to this bill.
Right. And on the amendment, I recognize, and thank you, Senator Castro, on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The question is for the
Yes,
proffer of
go
the
ahead and
amendment.
state your question.
Yeah, thank you, Madam. So, Senator, if you will, just clarify for me, I'm not necessarily raising an objection to your proposed amendment. Is your intent to have The application submitted for the purposes of converting an existing school or the conversion of any facility, such as a facility that may be occupied by, that serves an administrative function.
Senator Titchener, would you like to answer that question?
Certainly, and it is a good question because we have seen recently that other facilities have been identified for usage for educational purposes. So this is written more generally that the superintendent could look at the breadth of its facilities and see if there is something that exists that could be utilized and converted into a charter school. So if that's answer enough, it's left more general so that it could be a public school itself, but it could be one of the other associated facilities within the GDOE.
Thank you, Senator Teichel. Senator Castro, does that suffice?
I think it's a legitimate statement and a legitimate amendment, but I raise an objection to that if that's in fact the intent. And perhaps I can redirect my question to the former chairman of the Board of Education, one of our colleagues. It's my opinion, Madam Speaker, that this particular provision in the law that reads as follows, that the Senator Moylan is attempting to strike out here, is I'll read from line 16 and 17 if you want to follow along. It reads as follows, quote, no more than 3 non-converted public schools shall be authorized. It's my understanding, Madam Speaker, that that particular statement was included so that in the event there was a low-performing school, a persistent low-performing school, in the event that there was a school that was high risk, if you will, not the district, but the school that was at high risk for, let's say, persistent safety issues or issues of health or life, or even sanitation, as an example, Madam Speaker, that there would be the opportunity for a body, a management team, or a chartered entity to come in and, quote-unquote, convert that school from a public school. And I'll give a loose example. It's probably a terrible example, so this is just for purposes of illustration. Let's say, for example, Carbolito Elementary School, which is a great school in my village. But let's say they were a persistent, low-performing school. First year, third year, fifth year, and then it was deemed by the board and or the superintendent that they should be up. They were a candidate for conversion to a charter entity, right? That would be a turnaround strategy. That was my understanding of the spirit of the law when this specific provision was included and became statute, but I could be wrong. And so, I don't know, my colleague Senator Snogstein might have greater insight, but if that was the intent, as I had just explained, then I support Senator Moylan's view because I haven't seen, as a matter of public record, or I haven't seen it stated over and over again that one or more schools are persistently low performing, that it required them to be converted. So that would be the basis upon which I support Senator Moylan's bill. And I think that we can reach a happy medium, Madam Speaker, on the previous speaker's concern about the utilization of existing DOE spaces so we can maximize those facilities. But I didn't want to make that a condition of approval going forward for other charter schools. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Castro. Senator St. Augustine, we'll take a moment and recess. Y minuto 35 en la legislatura en Guam is back from recess. We last left off with Senator San Augustine on an inquiry by Senator Castro. Senator San Augustine, do you wish to answer?
Madam Speaker, when I was with the Board of Education, when this bill was introduced, that no more than 3 non-converted public schools shall be authorized. Back then, the intent was, because the charter school concept was new. They didn't want to have a runaway of applicants of charter schools. That was the intent, to restrict it. Now we have found, and then back then, the population at DOE was 33,000 plus. Today, the population today is 29 and going down. Where are the students going? Off island, or are they going to the charter schools, or are they going to private schools? So actually lifting it and removing the no more than 3 conversion, I have no problem with that one. Now the issue on the academy, the charter school first getting validation from superintendent in writing, it's kind of like leaving the superintendent again in charge of determining what school can be converted. And I think that would be something that the oversight chair should be looking at. It's to determine exactly what Senator Castro brought up. And I'm not going to say any of our public schools are low performing schools, but maybe I would believe our oversight chair has been looking into it, is to determine if the schools that exist today that has or does not have the population of the way the school was built needs to be converted, and schools need to be merged. And I'll give you a very good example, Madam Speaker. If you look at Southern High, it was built for 3,000 students. It has half of that population. They could actually add a school into that school without a problem. It'll reduce the cost of running another school by merging them together. Because no matter what, we still have to pay for the power, the maintenance of the building. At Southern High is a very good example. Or no different as they bring up Chief Brody. And I'll use them as an example. They want to convert that to middle school. That's something that was looked at many years ago. And why? Is because the number of students that should have been in that school was 600. It's down to 200 or under 3. So that's why that's being considered. But in reference to this, to ask the superintendent, I would have reservation to ask him when he should be reporting to the legislature when we are sitting in the budget. Where is he going to start identifying the distribution of students and where they go throughout the island? Because we can't continue paying for a school that's underutilized. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. Senator Will, does that address your... Yes, you had the floor on the inquiry.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. And so just to be clear, the amendment as written, I rise in objection to the amendment as it reads. Yeah.
An objection.
Thank you.
Did he say objection? Yes. There's been an objection. Anyone else on the main amendment? On the Senator March Tachino amendment? If Senator Moylan, I will recognize you. Senator Tachino, I will let Senator Moylan speak first. You may sit. Senator Moylan, please proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank my colleague for the amendment. I'd just like to clarify that the legislation, this Bill 57 here, the purpose was to streamline the application requirements for a new or a converted academy charter school on the island by allowing the applicant to apply for either option. So if the entity is able to accomplish the requirements outlined by the converted schools, then they may be able to apply under that license. Otherwise, the entity can apply as a new school and invest in its infrastructure. The amendment which I object to is basically we're requiring the superintendent then to validate first with the charter school applicant. And we're understanding from our public hearings that pretty much GDOE wants to move away from overseeing our charter schools and doesn't necessarily want more things to do with the charter school because they're busy and doing what they have to do with their own school. So as I see this amendment, I look at it as just more red tape that we're requiring a charter school to go through. So it doesn't really help our charter schools with what we want to do with the bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Si Diyos masi, Senator Moylan. Anyone else on the amendment? If not, Senator Marsh Tachino, you may close.
Saina Maasi. Well, I have two parts here. One is we are elected here to think of the bigger picture. And in that bigger picture, it is thinking long-term, and it is thinking beyond some of the things that were just outlined. This amendment is looking for a mechanism that provides flexibility, but also due diligence. We just heard from a former senator from GIGO that there are schools out there that are underutilized, and in touring those facilities at an earlier date this year, we heard some really troubling news about how the maintenance of those facilities, because they are being underutilized and they are so large, that they are falling in disrepair. So I do not think that is due diligence in taking care of our government facilities. I do not think that that is due diligence in maximizing the potential, but instead letting it fall to disrepair and having parts of those facilities that are not being utilized whatsoever. I do, and I may need to do this separately, upon discussion during recess with others, I am proposing to put an amendment to my amendment to say that they would validate with the superintendent or Board of Education to provide more flexibility, but I do think that that due diligence is necessary rather than just letting some schools sit partially fallow or crumble or be in disrepair and not serve the community at all, but rather become a burden to the community while we rush out potentially to be seeking new facilities. To me, that doesn't make sense in the bigger picture when we are supposed to be, as senators, looking at that bigger picture of maximizing our facilities and taking care of our community's needs rather than letting things potentially fall fallow or be underutilized. So I don't know if that needs to be proposed separately to add in or Board of Education to provide a little more flexibility in that process.
Senator Titano, do you need a little time to work with that proposed amendment to the amendment? Will that help you? If so, I will grant a recess.
Well, it's 4 words, so I can type in those 4 words if that's what you're calling for.
So if, I will go at it this time. I'm going to take a minute recess.
Okay.
Y minuto 35 na legislatura in Guahan is back from recess. Before I give the floor back to Assistant Majority Leader, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the good speaker, former speaker, Speaker Judith Wanpat. Thank you for joining us, and note that you're welcome to the into the body of the session floor for the duration of Assistant Majority Leader. I will acknowledge you at this time.
Sainamaasi, Madam Speaker. I move to recess until 10:30 a.m. tomorrow.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries.